What advantage does Kate see in Amigo bar-shaped hot air balloons?
Many people can see them.
Chapter 34. A salesperson's life. Kate is pleased to have a chat with Jerry Dixon, one of UC's new star salesmen. She meets him in his office after he has completed his report.
The organization has devoted substantial resources to training the sales force.
Indeed it has. We have been given crash courses by sales managers and the technical specialists from within the organization, not to mention various motivational speakers, including a well-known football coach.
Really? Well, football coaches are good at pumping up their team, but can they really motivate a sales force?
A famous sports figure is in a good position to help salespeople improve their performance through motivation.
UC has plenty of good ideas. Still, I'm a bit skeptical about that one. After all, coaches usually lack business experience and savvy.
But they make a sales force excited and hungry to win a sale. In the short run, a good motivational speaker can create a positive state of mind about sales in a company.
What training methods and materials did the company use?
Very varied ones. Lectures, video films, texts, simulation exercises, case studies, on-the-job training.
What's the key to success in sales, Jerry?
In my opinion, in order to succeed, a salesman must communicate with customers and not make objects of them. Like Lieutenant Columbo, he's a good listener. He must solve problems and not bluff his way out of situations or blame others.
How do you react when you face a refusal?
I try not to take rejection personally. I try to take it as information I can learn from. You see, a salesman must always upgrade his skills.
It's good to meet someone who is so positive.
I love my work. UC gives its sales force an adequate degree of freedom. It also provides a good income and incentives.
What sales compensation program are you offered?
An adequate income mix of salary and commission. Besides, UC offers a certain number of fringe benefits. And of course, it reimburses expenses.
In such conditions, you can only work efficiently.
Well, Wes Coyner, the sales director, has seen to it. He has managed to maximize the sales force's sales time and to minimize time and expenses spent on traveling and waiting.
I also know that Wes insists a lot on the sales force being able to enjoy all kinds of perks.
It means a lot to me to have a smartphone, sickness benefits, paid vacations, etc. And I was forgetting, membership of a health club. Might come in handy to lose a bit of this paunch.
Comprehension. Why is Kate pleased to have a chat with Jerry Dixon?
Because she is interested in discussing sales with one of the company's best salespeople.
What appears to be a priority at UC?
The training of the sales force appears to be a priority at UC.
What kind of training has UC provided for its sales force?
It has provided commercial as well as technical training to its sales force.
Why was a football coach hired to train the sales force?
Because UC thought a coach could motivate the sales force effectively.
What does Jerry think of a talk by a well-known football coach?
He thinks it has positive effects in the short run.
According to Jerry, what are the qualities of a good salesperson?
A good salesperson is a good communicator who respects the customers, considers them as partners, listens to them, and tries to solve their problems.
What effect should rejection have on a salesperson?
A good salesperson should not consider it as a personal failure, but as an opportunity to learn.
What kind of pay does Jerry receive?
He receives a fixed salary and commission. Besides, he's entitled to some fringe benefits.
What characterizes Wes Coyner's approach to salesmanship?
Wes Coyner insists on efficient work by making sure salespeople devote as much time as possible to the sales act.
What problem can a health club membership help Jerry solve?
It can help him solve his weight problem.
Chapter 35. In charge of exporting. Kate has just been appointed export manager. As her assistant, she has chosen Amy Zhu, a marketing department colleague she has always esteemed. In her luxurious office and suite on the 30th floor of an office building in Philadelphia, overlooking the Delaware River, Kate is discussing her agenda for the next 4 weeks with Amy.
The dates of my trip are now more or less final. I will leave immediately after our monthly executive meeting next week. You will find a tentative itinerary on the computer.
Right. What will be your first destination?
My first stop will be Singapore to attend the International Food Packaging Conference. Can you please book me on a non-stop flight, business class, and confirm hotel reservations there?
I've already sent an email to all our area representatives to let them know that you will be holding an international briefing session there.
Good. That reminds me that we will need a seminar room.
That has been attended to. I've reserved space for about 25 with all the audiovisual equipment.
Congratulations! You've done a great job on that. I would like you to draft a memorandum for my signature addressed to all sales managers explaining the purpose of my trip. To get to know our local staff and to pay courtesy calls to our important clients so as to establish a personal relationship with them.
Did you have time to look at my recap of sales figures for the first 2 quarters, broken down by area?
Yes, that was a neat job and a great help. Thanks a lot. We seem to be doing well, except in Japan.
As a matter of fact, our market share has been stagnant there for the last 3 years. Our advertising campaigns haven't been much of a success.
That is where we will have to concentrate our efforts in the next few months. By the way, who is this Mr. Tanabe that I have an appointment with on Friday morning?
He's the purchasing manager for a large chain of Japanese retail stores, touring the country in search of new products. We haven't done any business with him yet.
It might be a good idea to take him out to lunch. Could you find out whether he is free, and if so, what sort of food he likes? Healthy American, Chinese or Japanese?
May I suggest you also invite Hideko Mishima, a banker at Bank of America who handles our accounts and the financing of our export trade.
Why do you say that?
I'm sure Mr. Tanabe would appreciate the presence of a fellow countrywoman. You'd enjoy her company, too. She's the perfect blend of Oriental refinement and American pragmatism. The former by birth, the latter by training. She studied for 2 years at Wharton.
Thanks for the suggestion. That would be a nice way to combine business and social obligations. As a matter of fact, I was scheduled to meet Miss Mishama before my departure. This will help to create a congenial relationship quickly. Make sure you choose a nice place for lunch.
Comprehension. What shows that Kate does not take the monthly executive meeting lightly?
She makes a point of attending it before leaving.
Why does she plan to fly to Singapore first?
Because she wants to attend the International Food Packaging Conference.
What detail shows that Amy has prepared Kate's stay in Singapore carefully?
She has already informed the area representatives about Kate's briefing session and reserved a seminar room.
How will the seminar room be equipped?
There will be audio-visual equipment.
What does Kate expect from her trip?
She expects to get to know UC's local staff, as well as the company's major clients.
What country poses a problem for UC?
Japan poses a problem because its market share has been stagnant for 3 years, and advertising campaigns have not been successful there.
Why is Mr. Tanabe touring the USA?
He is in search of new products for his company.
Why does Amy suggest inviting Hideko Mishima?
Because she thinks Mr. Tanabe will appreciate the presence of a fellow countrywoman.
What is the major difference between Hideko and Mr. Tanabe?
Hideko is more familiar with the American way of life because she studied for 2 years at Wharton.
Chapter 36. Sustainable Development. Kate Hewitt and Russ Kingman are having a freewheeling discussion in Russ's office.
I have just read the article that student, Mark Rowe, wrote about UC in the Exponent.
Did you like it?
I sure did. To be honest, I did not expect such a sympathetic paper, nor did I expect it to be so well written. Mike Rowe will probably have a brilliant career in journalism. I'm glad he wasn't too inquisitive about possible cocoa shortages.
So, the risk exists despite denials by the Chocolate Producers Association.
The production of cocoa depends on a lot of different factors, like the weather, pests, wars.
I know. The depletion of the tropical rainforest in cocoa-producing countries like Brazil, Costa Rica, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Malaysia and Indonesia is a great concern, though I don't quite understand why.
The continuing demand for cocoa products has led to an increase in cocoa farming acreage, mainly in cleared areas. The chocolate industry is not the only one to blame. The logging industry is also responsible for the destruction of forests. And I didn't mention extensive farming, which involves clearing vast areas of rainforest to make way for cattle ranches. Now, the cacao tree's natural habitat is in the shade of the rainforest, where pollination and pest control occur naturally. As new plantations are carried out, more fertilizers and pesticides are being used. It's a vicious circle.
True, farming practices have had an adverse environmental impact, but farmers want to live decently. How can you promote conservation principles in communities suffering from poverty?
I must admit that the profits for people growing cacao trees are currently very low.
Hasn't UC already done something to address this situation?
Indeed, we have already started. When we became aware of the extent of the problem, we set up a program to assist farmers in Guatemala and Belize in maintaining and even increasing productivity at levels that are economically viable, ecologically sound, and culturally acceptable.
What results do you expect from this program?
We hope to establish a sustainable supply of cocoa within the next decade. I also hope that in the long run, we will extend this program to all cocoa-producing countries.
Why did UC choose Guatemala and Belize?
For historical reasons, among others. The tasty secret of the cacao tree was discovered over 2,000 years ago in Central America. Cacao is actually a Mayan word meaning good food. The Maya people mixed ground seeds with various seasonings to make a spicy, frothy drink which the Aztecs called chocolate.
How nice it would be if UC could really empower cocoa farmers around the world.
At UC, we must aim at making sure our chocolate benefits small family farms.
How does UC plan to achieve this commitment to social justice?
By offering fair prices to farmers under direct long-term contracts, by providing them with training programs in organic and sustainable farming techniques, by encouraging them to use ecologically sustainable methods and to conserve natural resources.
Thus, UC could set new social and environmental standards for chocolate companies and demonstrate that trade can indeed be a vehicle for sustainable development.
Unfortunately, the benefits of fair trade are not reaching all farmers because of insufficient demand for their crops. They only sell 20% of their production on fair trade terms. The rest goes to the world market at lower prices.
That is why we need to build a market for fair trade products in developed countries.
All the more so because we know that organic farming results in higher quality. Shade-grown cocoa farms not only help protect rainforest diversity, but they are more productive. In this particular case, productivity and quality are not necessarily incompatible.
Yes. After all, the Maya people were the first to grow the cacao tree, and they have grown it for centuries. With a little help from UC and enlightened consumers, their descendants may be growing it for many more centuries.
Comprehension. Why is Russ Kigman pleased with Mike Rowe's article?
Russ Kingman is pleased with Mike Rowe's article because it is sympathetic to UC and also because it is well written.
What subject did Mike Rowe not really deal with?
Mike Rowe did not really deal with the subject of a possible future risk of cocoa shortage.
Why is the depletion of the rainforest a major concern?
The depletion of the tropical rainforest is a major concern because when cocoa is grown in the shade of the tall, mature trees of the forest, pollination and pest control occur naturally.
What characterizes modern cocoa farming methods?
Modern cocoa farming methods entail the clearing of forests and the use of fertilizer and pesticides.
What is the major dilemma for cocoa farmers?
In order to make a decent living, it seems that farmers resort to practices which have an adverse effect on the environment.
What has UC set out to do to solve this problem?
UC has set up a program to assist farmers in Guatemala and Belize in maintaining and even increasing productivity at levels that are economically viable, ecologically sound, and culturally acceptable.
Why did UC choose to help farmers in Guatemala and Belize?
UC chose to help farmers in Guatemala and Belize because their distant ancestors, the Maya people, were the first to grow cocoa in these countries.
What is Kate's dream for the future of cocoa farmers?
Kate's dream is to see cocoa farming families benefit from their work.
Why is the way to social justice still very long for cocoa-producing farmers?
Farmers still have a long way to go because even those who work on fair trade terms do not benefit from fair trade. The demand for their crop is insufficient because it amounts to only 20% of their production, and they have to sell the remaining 80% on the world market at lower prices.
How could fair trade benefit cocoa-producing farmers, UC, and consumers?
Fair trade could benefit farmers by offering them a just reward for their efforts. It could benefit UC by offering it a steady supply of good quality organic raw material. And it could benefit customers by offering them high-quality chocolate.
Chapter 37. Relocation or outsourcing? Kate is having a cup of coffee in UC's cafeteria. She's sitting next to Jamie Maldonado. The foreman has been reading the newspaper and is now commenting on the news.
Another factory closure. Grizzly Motors will relocate its Phoenix plant in India.
Corporate downsizings are not new. The decision to relocate is appealing for a corporation when an aging factory needs modernization or renewal. Thus, it avoids capital expenditure.
Jobs are shifted to other countries where labor costs are up to 80% lower than here. On the other hand, if a country like Ecuador, where I was born, can benefit from relocations, people there shouldn't be unhappy about this situation.
Nor should the US company. By sending routine service and engineering tasks to nations with a surplus of educated workers, it is able to reduce overheads and improve efficiency. The US labor force and capital can be redeployed to higher value industry.
And by encouraging economic development in emergent countries, US companies will develop foreign markets for their goods and services.
That's the theory, but unions strongly object to such practices because they entail layoffs at home. Actually, the unions are moving into the fight to keep jobs at home. Who knows? Corporations may have to face a backlash.
Is the food industry concerned by relocation?
Not really, but many food corporations are squeezed by ever-increasing raw materials prices and ever stronger retailers. They struggle to contain costs and turn to outsourcing.
And I imagine UC is considering outsourcing.
Yes, indeed. It started outsourcing supplies in West Africa 5 years ago. More extensive outsourcing may be a sensible response to today's challenges.
How so?
Having someone on the ground in the cocoa-producing countries gives a company much better quality control. I also feel that a presence there is a good thing in terms of costs and innovation.
So, you disagree with the unions?
As far as relocation is concerned, I can easily sympathise with the plight of workers losing their jobs. But outsourcing helps improve the competitiveness of companies. In a globalised economy, firms that neglect cheaper supplies or services are doomed to lose markets, and declining companies do not create jobs.
What will be left for UC to do if it keeps outsourcing supplies?
UC can focus on manufacturing the end product, marketing, selling and distributing it, and less on the low-value added parts of the value chain. You see, resorting to our supplier of West African cocoa is cheaper and more flexible than sending a team of purchasers there.
What are UC's plans for Central American cocoa?
Some board members feel strongly about this region of the world where chocolate originated. A long-term supply agreement was signed between UC and the Guatemala Cocoa Board a few years ago.
Great.
That's not all. This agreement should pave the way for a state-of-the-art plant to be built that will produce cocoa liquor, butter and powder, processing 75,000 metric tons initially.
This is great news. I'm excited to hear that UC will be making a contribution to Guatemala's economy.
The plant should incorporate some of the latest technology to ensure Guatemala cocoa is processed to the highest standards.
It looks like a win-win partnership.
Yes. Creating value-added products in Guatemala will not only be good for the people of Guatemala, but will also allow UC to provide a greater range of cocoa products to meet the needs of consumers around the world.
Comprehension. What news is Jamie commenting on?
Jamie is commenting on the relocation of Grizzly Motors' Phoenix plant in India.
According to Kate, what motivates companies to relocate?
According to Kate, companies relocate their aging factories which need modernization or renewal in order to avoid capital expenditure.
Why is Jamie not altogether unhappy about relocations?
Jamie is not altogether unhappy about relocation because developing countries like Ecuador, where he was born, may benefit from relocations.
What benefits does a company draw from relocation? What benefits does a host company draw from relocation decision made by a company from a developed country?
A U.S. company benefits from a reduction of its overheads and an improvement of its efficiency. Thus, it can redeploy its labor force and capital to higher value industry. The economy of the host country benefits from relocation because new jobs are offered to its workers.
What is the attitude of labor unions to the issue of relocation?
Unions strongly object to relocation because it entails unemployment at home.
Why are food companies interested in outsourcing?
Food companies are interested in outsourcing because with the increasing prices of raw materials and the strength of retailers, they have to keep costs down.
Why does Kate feel it is necessary for a company to resort to outsourcing nowadays?
Kate feels it is necessary for a company to resort to outsourcing nowadays because it helps increase the competitiveness of companies, and companies which are not competitive lose markets and do not recruit workers.
What consequences does the outsourcing of supplies have for UC?
UC's outsourcing of supplies entails refocusing on manufacturing the end product, marketing, selling, and distributing it.
What plans does UC have for Central America?
UC plans to build a state-of-the-art plant that will produce cocoa liquor, butter, and powder in Guatemala.
What benefits will Guatemala's economy and UC draw from the company's project?
This project will offer skilled jobs to Guatemala workers, and UC will be able to offer a greater range of cocoa products to its customers.
Chapter 38. Investing in Russia. Kate is talking with Boris Medvedev, a young Russian carrying out an internship in the finance department with Dan Bush. Boris has contributed to the preparation of UC's investment project in Russia and has helped finalize it.
It clearly appears that Russia will be UC's key target market in Eastern Europe.
You bet. Russian consumers love chocolate. With a per capita consumption of 4.5 kilos a year, they already eat more chocolate than the French.
France being a traditional chocolate country.
According to a recent market study, the average Russian will eat 6 kilos of chocolate per year in 5 years from now.
You've certainly done your homework, Boris.
Yes. I spent a lot of time working on UC's plans concerning Russia with Dan Bush. After all, that was the reason why UC offered me an internship.
I understand UC has an ambitious development project in your country.
UC sales in Russia have trebled in the last 5 years, and it has set a target of trebling them again within 3 years after opening a plant near Moscow.
I heard that the construction of UC's state-of-the-art factory has actually begun.
Yes. The president of the company laid the foundation stone last month. The factory should be operational in the second semester of next year.
How much does the investment amount to?
$30 million. And the factory is expected to employ 75 people.
Quite a lot of money indeed. I suppose you are happy about UC investing in your native country?
And not just because, like all good Russians, I love chocolate. This investment makes a lot of sense. UC's new facility will be closer to its rapidly growing customer base. The company is smart enough to capture the great market opportunity presented by Russia.
Things are moving fast in your country. When I listen to you talk, I get the impression that the time when Russia's stock market was considered more of a war zone than a safe haven is light years away.
The case for investment in Russia is growing stronger now. The country's credentials are robust. The foreign exchange reserves are high. A middle class is emerging.
But isn't your picture too rosy?
Well, I admit that Russia is still vulnerable. But as long as the government provides the market, the business community, and the domestic population with the political stability they crave, Russia is an obvious country for an investor. Dan Bush wouldn't deny that.
Yes. It belongs to the club of the on-the-move BRIC economies: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And it is not too deep in debt.
I feel optimistic. Russia's economy is shifting from commodity-dependent sectors like oil and mining to consumer goods industries.
That feature should carry Russia through any global downturn and help deliver solid returns for the years to come.
Comprehension. What is Boris's internship assignment?
Boris's internship assignment consists in working on UC's investment in Russia and helping finalize it.
Why will Russia be UC's target market in Eastern Europe?
Russia will be UC's target market in Eastern Europe because its per capita chocolate consumption is growing very fast.
What do the chocolate consumption statistics given by Boris show?
The chocolate consumption statistics given by Boris show that the Russians already eat more chocolate than the French and will really increase their consumption in the next 5 years.
What target does UC hope to reach in the 3 years following the construction of its new plant in Russia?
UC hopes to treble its sales in Russia in the next 5 years.
Why did the president of UC recently go to Russia?
The president of UC went to Russia in order to lay the foundation stone of UC's new plant.
Why is Boris happy about UC investment in Russia?
Boris is happy about UC's investment because Russia is his native country, and also because the investment is very significant and it will provide work for 75 people.
What significant changes occurred in Russia's economy?
The most significant change is that now investors no longer consider that Russia is a hazardous country.
Why does Boris consider it a good idea to invest in Russia?
Boris considers that it is now a good idea to invest in Russia because the financial conditions of the country have improved.
What condition is necessary for successful investments in Russia?
The necessary condition for successful investments in Russia is political stability.
What should the consequences of Russia's economic shift be?
Russia's economic shift from commodity-dependent sectors to consumer goods industries should carry the country through the crisis and bring it profits.
Chapter 39. A business negotiation. Kate has always kept in touch with her Australian friend Mary Ann, who she met while studying in Texas. During a visit to Australia, she decides to meet Bruce Patterson, Mary Ann's uncle. He also happens to be the manager of Black Swan Traders, a major wholesaling company distributing foodstuffs in Western Australia.
Good day, Kate. Pleased to meet you. Do take a seat. And Mary Ann thinks highly of you.
I'm certainly happy to hear that. Mary Ann is very sweet.
How do you like it here in Oz?
It's great. Visiting Australia has always been one of my most cherished dreams. But let's get down to business, and hopefully we'll talk about Australia later.
Good on ya. Marianne told me you're an effective business person. Well, I've studied your proposal for a distribution agreement for UC's chocolate bars in Western Australia. You'd like our state to be a test market.
Yes. Needless to say, we at UC hope this will be the beginning of a fruitful business relationship between our two companies.
I share that view.
Good. Can we now agree on an overall procedure for our negotiation?
What outline do you suggest?
I would like to begin by asking you some questions about Black Swan Traders and the kind of services you offer. Then we could move on to a definition of UC's objectives in Western Australia. If it appears that we have a broad agreement, we will talk about possible pricing, delivery, and support arrangements.
By that time, we will probably be very hungry. We could go to a BYO restaurant. I have a great bottle of Chardonnay from Margaret River that I'd like you to taste.
That sounds good. Mary Ann is rhapsodic about Australian wines, Mr. Patterson.
Call me Bruce, please.
Well, Bruce, where does your company distribute foodstuffs?
In all suitable outlets in Western Australia. Our well-structured distribution system gives us a competitive edge.
What kind of business relationships do you have with supermarkets?
I don't think I'll surprise you much if I tell you that supermarkets are powerful and influential. It used to be that manufacturers held all the cards.
Whereas now, supermarkets own the arena. Will our chocolate bars also be sold through vending machines?
Yes, virtually everywhere, even beyond the rabbit-proof fence.
I beg your pardon?
The outback, if you prefer. The bush, the wilderness. I keep forgetting that we are divided by a common language, as George Bernard Shaw said about England and America. At Black Swan Traders, we realise that chocolate bars must be sold in as many outlets as possible to provide maximum brand exposure and consumer convenience.
You're right. However good a product may be, the truly important questions revolve around the consumer. By the way, let me assure you that at UC, we don't mean to distribute our products through you, but to you. We are quite prepared to discuss interesting margins, special deals, premiums, cooperative advertising, sales contests.
Beaut.
Comprehension. What activity is Black Swan Traders involved in?
Black Swan Traders is a wholesaling company which distributes foodstuffs all over Western Australia.
Why is Bruce Patterson happy to meet Kate?
Apart from the prospect of doing business with her, he is pleased to meet a person whom his niece regards highly.
Why does Bruce say that Kate is an effective business person?
She does not waste time on small talk, however much she would like to speak about Australia.
What deal would Kate like to negotiate with Bruce?
She would like him to sign a distribution agreement for UC's chocolate bars in Western Australia.
What shows that Kate has prepared the negotiation carefully?
She submits an outline of the negotiation for Bruce's approval.
How would you characterize the atmosphere of the negotiation between Kate and Bruce?
It is informal. For instance, they talk on a first-name basis.
Why isn't Kate impressed when Bruce speaks about the efficiency of Black Swan Traders' distribution system?
Because she almost interrupts him to move on to her next question.
With what form of distribution is UC likely to encounter difficulties in Western Australia?
Distribution to supermarkets is likely to be a major challenge for UC because today's market is no longer a seller's market. Buyers can dictate their law much more easily than in the past.
What other form of distribution does Kate want to discuss?
She also wishes to discuss vending machines.
Why is it important for UC's chocolate bars to be present in as many retail outlets as possible?
Because consumers must be given plenty of opportunities to see them. They should also have easy access to them.
Chapter 40. Talking about futures. Kate has just returned from her trip to Australia and has decided to take a long weekend. Naturally, she has flown down to Houston to be with her boyfriend Carlos, who now works for a big oil firm there. It's Friday evening, he's just got back from work, and they're having a pre-dinner drink.
Ah, Kate, it's so wonderful to come home from work and find you here. It's usually at least 9 p.m. when I pick you up at the airport.
Well, I decided to take the afternoon off and get the first flight to Houston. I came over from the airport by taxi. And what I didn't tell you when I phoned earlier is that I've taken Monday off too.
Fantastic. I guess you needed a break after your trip to Australia.
It certainly won't do me any harm. And you know, I've got leave piling up which I never find time to take. But most of all, I wanted to be with you.
I'm really happy to have you here with me, Kate. I miss you.
You're always welcome in Philadelphia, Carlos.
I know, but you're not always there at the weekend, are you?
No, I'm sorry. I've just been so busy over the last few months. I always seem to be commuting between Philadelphia and San Antonio and San Diego.
So, how did you like Australia? God, I wish I could have come with you.
It was great, or at least Perth was. I did some business with Mary Ann's uncle, and he showed me around a lot.
Mary Ann?
Surely you remember Mary Ann. She was studying anthropology in Austin.
Ah, yes, I remember Mary Ann.
I visited a lot of other places too, but it's not the same when you're just doing business.
So we could always go back there together and visit the place properly.
I'd love to. We could go to New Zealand too.
Sounds great.
You know, Carlos, coming down on the plane from Philadelphia, I was thinking,
What about?
You know all about futures and commodities and hedging, don't you?
I have to, Kate, for my job. Why do you ask?
I just have the impression, from various discussions I've had with Russ and other people at headquarters, that I'm going to have to learn all about them pretty soon.
You should already know all that stuff. We covered it in finance when we were in Austin.
You know I was always more interested in marketing. And anyway, you forget things pretty quickly if you never use them.
We're complementary, as you once said. We'd make a good team.
I still believe that, Carlos.
Listen, Kate, I'll tell you everything you want to know about futures. But let's leave that till tomorrow morning. Tonight, I'd like to talk about our future.
Comprehension. Why has Kate arrived earlier than usual at her boyfriend's in Houston?
Kate has arrived earlier than usual because she decided to take the afternoon off from work.
Did Carlos pick her up at the airport as he usually does?
No, he didn't. Because he was at work, so Kate got a taxi to come from the airport.
What reasons does Kate give for deciding to take a long weekend?
Kate gives several reasons. A break after her trip to Australia, the leave piling up which she never finds time to take, and most of all, her desire to be with Carlos.
What justification does Carlos give for not spending more weekends with Kate in Philadelphia?
He defends himself by saying that Kate is not always there at weekends.
Why did Kate particularly appreciate Perth during her trip to Australia?
She appreciated Perth particularly because Mary Ann's uncle showed her around a lot, which was not the case elsewhere.
Why was Kate thinking about futures, commodities, and hedging while on the plane from Philadelphia?
Because she has the impression that she's going to have to learn all about them pretty soon, and she knows that Carlos is already an expert.
Why does Carlos know all about these aspects of finance?
He says he has to know all about them for his work.
According to Carlos, why should Kate already know about them too?
Carlos says that Kate should already know all about them because they covered all that stuff in finance when they were in Austin.
What excuse does Kate give to justify her apparent lack of knowledge about these subjects?
She says that she was always more interested in marketing and that you forget things pretty quickly if you never use them.
Why does Carlos not want to talk about futures, etc., tonight?
We understand that Carlos doesn't want to talk about work tonight, but about more personal things, like their own future, for example.
Chapter 41. Living in the Fast Lane. After last weekend's discussions, Kate and Carlos agreed that they wanted to spend more time together and live like a normal couple, as Carlos put it. This would obviously mean finding jobs in the same city or region, and so Kate has decided to broach the subject with her boss, Russ Kingman.
So basically what you're saying, Kate, is that your boyfriend would like to see more of you. Is that it?
That's one way of putting it, yes.
Well, I can certainly understand him.
I'd like to see more of Carlos too. In fact, we're planning to get married.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You talked about being transferred to San Antonio, but is that really the solution? Couldn't Carlos get a job here in Philadelphia?
He could, obviously, and he's quite prepared to move. He's getting a little tired of Houston, in fact. But he's from San Antonio, and he'd love to move back there. He's even talked about working for UC.
Tell me, Kate, you're from England. How would you like to move back there with Carlos?
Move back to England? But to do what?
You remember Alexander Spencer Jones, don't you?
Absolutely. He helped me a lot when I first started working for United Chocolate in the UK.
He phoned me a couple of weeks ago and said he'd like you back in England. Those were his precise words.
Well, it's very kind of him to think about my future. Perhaps he could start by consulting me first.
Oh, but he has your interest at heart, you know. I got the impression he likes you a lot.
Alexander Spencer Jones likes a lot of women, Russ.
You know that Walter Adams, who founded Norfolk Chocolate and created the famous Norfolk Nuggets, died a few months ago?
Of course, it was very sad.
And you know that Bill Hayward is going to retire.
Bill, the plant manager?
That's his official title, but he's really the key figure in that operation.
No, I didn't know he was retiring.
United Chocolate UK wants to give Norfolk Chocolate a lot more autonomy. Apparently, they feel that there's a vast potential there that is not being fully exploited. Alexander Spencer Jones recommended you to take over there. They'd appoint a new plant manager, of course.
But I don't have any experience of general management.
Maybe not, Kate, but you have the ability to succeed.
And what about Carlos? Why would he want to come and live in England?
I don't know. For the golf?
Carlos doesn't play golf, Russ.
Well, he'll just have to learn, won't he?
Comprehension. Why has Kate asked her boss about the possibility of her working in San Antonio?
Because working in San Antonio would bring Kate much closer to Carlos, who works in Houston.
Initially, what alternative does Russ Kingman propose to enable Kate's boyfriend to see more of her?
Russ's alternative proposal is for Carlos to come and work in Philadelphia.
As well as spending more time together and living like a normal couple, what else do Kate and Carlos intend to do?
Kate tells her boss they are planning to get married.
Why would Carlos love to work for UC in San Antonio?
Firstly, he is getting a little tired of Houston, but obviously San Antonio attracts him because that is where he comes from.
Why does Kate's boss suggest that she return to England?
Russ makes this suggestion because he has learned that Alexander Spencer Jones would like her to return to Norfolk Chocolate.
How does Kate react when Russ tells her about Alexander Spencer Jones's proposal?
She seems a little annoyed that he didn't bother to consult her first.
Why would Alexander Spencer Jones like Kate back in England?
It seems that he wants her to take over from Bill Hayward, the plant manager who will soon be retiring.
What function would Kate be likely to assume if she were to return to Norfolk Chocolate?
Kate would be the general manager or managing director of the subsidiary.
What is United Chocolate UK's assessment of Norfolk Chocolate's current performance?
United Chocolate UK's assessment of Norfolk Chocolate is that it is currently underperforming. There's a vast potential there that is not being fully exploited.
According to Russ, what might attract Carlos to England?
Russ suggests, mistakenly, that Carlos might be attracted by being able to play golf there.
Chapter 42. Facing political problems. Kate has been doing some thinking about Alexander Spencer Jones' suggestion, relayed by Russ Kingman, that she return to England to take over at Norfolk Chocolate. However, before she actually gets the chance to discuss the matter seriously with Carlos, Russ asks her to fly to China, where United Chocolate has encountered a serious problem. She's on the plane with Amy Zhu, who is now a key member of Kate's team in the marketing department.
It was good of you to accompany me on this trip at such short notice. I hope your husband doesn't mind looking after the children.
No, that's okay. His mother is going to come and stay in Philadelphia while I'm away. He knows that I'm always happy to be able to return to China.
You're lucky. I wish my boyfriend were as relaxed as that about all my travelling.
But he does only see you at weekends, and you're out on the road a lot more than I am.
So, are you perfectly clear about the situation in Guangzhou? I didn't have much time to explain things on the phone.
You mean about our local partner? Mean you?
Yes. Russ Kingman received a phone call last week from the US consulate in Guangzhou, warning him that copycat products were turning up in certain sales outlets. And they were being sold using one of Minyu's brands.
I was really shocked to hear that, Kate. I was the one who made the initial contacts with Minyu during the Guangzhou Trade Fair and subsequently recommended them.
I know, Amy, but you don't need to feel responsible in any way. It's not your fault. I don't want to say anything rude about China, but UC is not the first victim of this sort of practice. Business is all about taking risks.
But if we knew about the risk, why didn't we just distribute our new products directly? We've been doing it elsewhere in China for a number of years.
That's true. China is a really gigantic market, but at the same time it's a multitude of different markets, depending on the region. We've been very successful distributing directly in a few big cities, particularly further north, like Beijing or Shanghai. But Guangzhou is the gateway to the south, where previously we'd had no experience.
It's a huge city, too.
Yes, but we wanted to extend our distribution to more rural areas, and Minu seemed to be the right partner to help us do that.
So, what is our plan of action? Do we just rescind the contract and take them to court?
That's what will happen at some point, no doubt. But for the moment, we have to tread very carefully. The affair has taken a political turn. The President of the United States will soon be visiting Beijing, and the talks will focus on American FDI in China and the trade balance between the two countries.
So what does that mean for our trip?
We'll be discussing things tomorrow with the commercial and legal experts at the US consulate. They will also be present on Tuesday, when we are due to meet with representatives of Minu. Those discussions will be very difficult and may drag on for 2 or 3 days. I don't need to tell you, Amy, that your knowledge of the language and the culture will be absolutely precious.
Comprehension. What does Carlos think about Alexander Spencer Jones' suggestion that Kate return to England to take over at Norfolk Chocolate?
We don't really know. In the introduction, we learn that Kate hasn't actually had the chance to discuss the matter seriously with Carlos yet.
Who is going to look after Amy's children while she is away?
From what Kate says, we can assume that her husband is going to look after the children, but that he will be assisted by his mother.
Does Carlos react to Kate's traveling in the same way as Amy's husband does to her trip to China?
Probably not. Amy says that her husband knows she is always happy to return to China, while Kate wishes that Carlos was as relaxed as all that about all her traveling.
Why did the U.S. consulate in Guangzhou phone Russ Kingman last week?
The U.S. consulate phoned to tell him that copycat products were being sold in some outlets under one of Minu's brands.
Why does Amy say she was really shocked to hear about what Minu was doing?
She was really shocked because she was the one who made the initial contacts with Minu and consequently recommended them. She no doubt feels responsible for the problem.
Why did UC choose to work with Minu rather than just distributing its new products directly?
Because UC wanted to try and penetrate rural markets in the South, where they'd had no experience, and Minu seemed to be the right partner to help them do that.
Will UC rescind their contract with Minu and take legal action against them?
Not for the moment, but Kate says that will probably happen at some point.
Why does Kate say that the affair has taken a political turn?
The affair has taken a political turn because of the President of the United States' forthcoming visit to China, during which talks will focus on direct investment and trade. UC's problems could well prove to be a source of friction.
Who will be present at the meeting, which Kate and Amy have on Tuesday?
The people present at the meeting will be the commercial and legal experts from the U.S. consulate, together with representatives of Minu.
Why is Kate pleased to have Amy with her for the difficult discussions they will have in Guangzhou?
Kate says that Amy's knowledge of the language and the culture will be absolutely precious. Chapter 43. Threat of a boycott. Russ Kingman is hard at work in his office in Philadelphia when the phone rings. As always, he lets it ring 4 times before answering. The caller is Arnold K. Sweetwater, president of United Chocolate.
Russ Kingman speaking.
Hi, Russ. It's Arnold.
Arn, how are you? How was the vacation?
It was fine, Russ. Just fine. I think I told you we were in Palm Springs. I spent most of my time on the golf course.
I can imagine. When are we going to have a round together?
I think next week should be okay. I'll let you know. But I didn't phone you to talk about golf, Russ. There's a problem down in San Antonio, and I need your assistance.
What sort of a problem, Arn?
You know, we're enlarging our production unit down there to increase capacity. Well, in order to do that, we're going to have to cut into about 2 acres of forest land.
So what?
It just so happens that the woodland has historical significance for the Latino population. It was the site of a Mexican army camp during the Battle of the Alamo.
I see the problem, Arn.
The Latinos are threatening to boycott our products, and they're being actively supported by the conservationists, not to mention the Native Americans.
But is that a marketing problem?
Indirectly, it is. But that's not why I called you about it. Someone suggested I send a member of your team down there to try and sort things out.
What? Any member?
No. Kate Hewitt.
Okay, I get it.
I've been told she is a great negotiator.
Yes, she has a lot of talent. Every so often you have somebody through your department, and you know that person will go a long way. Kate is one of those.
I was also told that she has a Latino boyfriend down in Texas.
Yes, in Houston. The problem is that Kate's not here at the moment. I sent her off to Guangzhou yesterday to try to sort out the mess we've got into with Minyu. I don't think she was very happy to leave at such short notice, and I doubt whether her boyfriend enjoyed spending another weekend without her. They only see one another at weekends, and that's not every weekend.
When does she get back from China?
By Friday, I would say.
Okay, Russ. As soon as she gets back, you're going to send her down to San Antonio. And if she can negotiate a satisfactory agreement down there, give her a week off so that she can spend some time with her boyfriend.
Okay, Arn. I'll leave a message on her voicemail and ask her to get back to me.
Comprehension. Does Russ answer the telephone immediately?
No. He always lets it ring 4 times before answering.
Why does the president of United Chocolate phone Russ?
Arnold phones Russ to tell him about the problem in San Antonio.
When are Arnold and Russ likely to play a round of golf together?
From what Arnold says, we can assume that they are likely to play next week.
Why has United Chocolate had to cut into about 2 acres of forest land?
United Chocolate has had to do this because it is enlarging its production unit in San Antonio in order to increase capacity.
Why does the woodland in question have historical significance for the Latino population?
It has historical significance because it was the site of a Mexican army camp during the Battle of the Alamo.
For what reason are the conservationists and the Native Americans supporting the Latinos?
The conservationists and the Native Americans are supporting the Latinos because they too disapprove of the planned enlargement of UC's San Antonio production unit and therefore support the call for a boycott.
Whom does Arnold want to send to San Antonio?
Arnold wants to send Kate to San Antonio to try and sort things out, as he puts it.
Would you say that Russ is optimistic about Kate's career prospects?
Yes, he seems very optimistic because he speaks very highly of Kate and says she will go a long way.
According to Russ, was Kate happy to go to China on business?
Russ says he doesn't think she was very happy to leave at such short notice.
What would be Kate's reward if she is able to negotiate a satisfactory agreement in San Antonio?
Arnold says that if she is able to negotiate a satisfactory agreement in San Antonio, Russ can give her a week off work.
Chapter 44. Making decisions. After her successful handling of the crisis down in San Antonio, caused by the enlargement of United Chocolate's production plant, Kate is very happy to take advantage of the week's vacation which UC's president promised her. Carlos is able to take a few days off too, and they spend their time in San Antonio and Houston making some important decisions about their future. Kate calls her mother.
Hello, is that you, Mum?
Hello, Kate. How wonderful to hear from you. Where are you?
I'm in Houston with Carlos. They gave me a week off work.
A week off work? Are you ill or something?
Well, I am exhausted, if you can call that being ill. Getting sick of living in the fast lane. As soon as I got back from Guangzhou, literally, I had to fly to San Antonio to sort out some mess down here.
I'm not surprised you're exhausted, Kate, with all the travelling you do. One day China, the next Texas.
You sound like Carlos, Mum. He's always on at me too. Said our relationship was beginning to resemble a business merger.
Well, I don't blame him, poor darling. He hardly ever sees you after all.
Anyway, we've made some decisions.
So?
I was offered a job in England, with Norfolk Chocolate in Norwich.
And have you accepted?
Well, I couldn't really refuse, could I? It's the post of acting managing director.
Wow, Kate, that's brilliant. Fantastic. Your dad will be delighted, not to mention Ben. He misses you a lot, you know.
I miss him too, Mum.
And what will Carlos do then?
He's coming with me, of course. Isn't that sweet of him?
It really is. You're a very lucky girl. Does he have a job to go to?
No, not yet. But we're not worried about that. With his experience, he's bound to find something.
So when are you coming over?
Well, there's nothing certain yet. We both need to speak to our bosses on Monday, but I'd say within a couple of weeks at the most. They want me to take over in Norwich as soon as possible.
You'll let us know when everything's been decided, won't you, love?
Of course I will, Mum.
We'll drive down and pick you up at the airport.
That would be lovely. By the way, there's something else I was going to tell you.
Yes, what was that?
We've decided to get married.
Oh, Kate, I'm so thrilled. That's wonderful news. Do you know when yet?
Not really, but as soon as we get settled down in England.
Comprehension. Why does Kate call her mother during her week off?
Kate calls her mother to announce two important decisions to her. Firstly, that she has been offered a job with Norfolk Chocolate in Norwich, and secondly, that she and Carlos are going to get married.
Why do you think Mrs. Hewitt asks her daughter whether she is ill?
Mrs. Hewitt is probably surprised that her daughter has a week off because she is used to Kate working all the time, and consequently asks, no doubt teasingly, whether she's ill.
Why is Kate exhausted, according to her mother?
Kate's mother tells her daughter that it's not surprising she's exhausted with all the travelling she does, China, Texas, etc.
Why do you think that Kate says her mother sounds like Carlos?
Because her mother is going on at her about doing too much travelling, and Kate says that Carlos is always doing the same thing.
What have Kate and Carlos been doing in San Antonio and Houston during the time they've spent together?
Kate and Carlos have obviously been discussing their future, perhaps with Carlos's parents too, in San Antonio. They've also been making some important decisions about Kate's job offer and their future together.
Why does Mrs. Hewitt say that her daughter is a very lucky girl?
Mrs. Hewitt says Kate is a very lucky girl because Carlos has been very sweet in accepting to go to England with her.
Has Carlos found a job in Norwich too?
Not yet, but Kate and Carlos aren't worried about that because of his experience, as Kate says.
When will Kate probably take over at Norfolk Chocolate?
Kate says that they want her to take over as soon as possible, but nothing has been decided yet. She says that it will probably be within a couple of weeks at the most.
According to Mrs. Hewitt, what will the family do when Kate and Carlos arrive in England?
Mrs. Hewitt says that they, the family, will drive down and pick Kate and Carlos up at the airport.
When will Kate and Carlos be getting married?
Kate says that she doesn't really know yet, but it will be as soon as they get settled down in England.
Chapter 45. Back in the UK. Kate is flying back to the UK with Carlos, having decided to accept Alexander Spencer Jones's offer to take over, temporarily at least, at Norfolk Chocolate. Kate is reading the airline magazine. Carlos is reading the Wall Street Journal.
Hey, honey, look at this. There's an article about United Chocolate.
Oh, yes? What does it say?
It's about the extension to the San Antonio production plant, and the Latinos threaten boycott. Hey, listen to this. UC dispatched a young negotiator believed to be English from Philadelphia.
Believed to be English? What a nice way of putting it.
Well, you are English, aren't you? And you're going back to England. You should be pleased.
But I am pleased, of course. And what pleases me more than anything else is the fact that you're coming with me.
I guess I was ready for a change, Kate. Houston is such a crazy place to live. And an oil firm is a crazy place to work, too, with the constant ups and downs in oil prices.
So you won't be looking for a job in the petroleum industry?
I doubt it very much. I really don't know what I'll be able to do.
Come and work at Norfolk Chocolate. I'm certainly going to need some expert financial analysis. It's not my speciality, as you know.
You know I would never come and work in your company. You'd be accused of nepotism, and that would damage your credibility. But I'd be happy to give you some expert advice, on a strictly unofficial basis, of course.
Thanks for the offer.
How far is Norwich from London, by the way?
I don't know. About 120 miles, I suppose.
Not that far, then.
Oh, come on, Carlos. We're talking about England, not Texas. You certainly wouldn't be able to commute. But there are other firms in the area, and it's not that far from Cambridge. There are lots of very dynamic high-tech firms that have grown up round the university. They call it Silicon Fen.
Silicon Fen? What on earth is a fen?
Oh, you'll see when you're over there.
Anyway, there's no big hurry to find a job given the salary that United Chocolate will be paying you.
Have you ever thought about starting your own consulting firm? That way you could work from home.
I've never thought seriously about it. It didn't seem like a good idea to me in Houston, but why not? I'll certainly give it some thought.
I think I'm going to watch one of the movies. What about you?
I'm not crazy about in-flight entertainment. The screen is too small, the sound is awful. I think I'll just try and get some sleep. How long is it before we arrive at Heathrow?
Another 6 or 7 hours at least. It's not that long ago since we left DFW. I bet we aren't even over the Atlantic yet.
Comprehension. Why are Kate and Carlos flying back to the UK?
They are flying back to the UK because Kate has decided to accept Alexander Spencer Jones's offer to take over at Norfolk Chocolate.
What has Carlos found in the Wall Street Journal that he wants to show to Kate?
Carlos has found an article about United Chocolate. It talks about the extension to the San Antonio production plant and the Latinos' threatened boycott, and it mentions Kate, the young negotiator.
What makes this return to England particularly pleasant for Kate?
Kate says that she's pleased first and foremost that Carlos is going with her.
Why does Carlos say he was ready for a change?
He says he was ready for a change because Houston was a crazy place to live and that an oil firm was a crazy place to work.
Is it likely that Carlos will look for a job in the oil industry in the UK?
We can assume it is very unlikely. He says, I doubt it very much.
According to Carlos, why would he never go and work for Norfolk Chocolate?
Because he describes Norfolk Chocolate as Kate's company and says that she would be accused of nepotism, which would damage her credibility.
Does Kate think that it will be possible for Carlos to find another job in the Norwich area?
Yes, she does. She says that there are other firms in the area. She also says that Cambridge, where there are lots of very dynamic high-tech firms that have grown up around the university, is not far away.
Why does Carlos say that he's in no hurry to find a new job?
He refers to the salary Kate will be earning in her new position. In other words, they won't have any problems financially.
What other suggestion does Kate make to Carlos about working when they're in Norwich?
Kate suggests that Carlos might start his own consulting firm and work from home.
Why does Carlos not want to watch one of the movies on the plane, as Kate intends to do?
He explains that he doesn't like in-flight entertainment too much because the screen is too small and the sound is awful.
Chapter 46. Analysing the company's accounts. Kate has spent her first weekend back in the UK studying in great detail the accounts of Norfolk Chocolate, going back as far as the takeover by United Chocolate plc. She was delighted to be able to rely on the expertise of Carlos. It is now Monday morning and she is meeting with Bill Hayward, the plant manager.
So, Kate, I hope you didn't have too much difficulty understanding the accounts. I expect you're used more to the American way of presenting them now.
You're referring to US GAAP, I suppose.
Exactly. In the UK, we've been using IFRS since 2005. There are still some differences, as you probably know, even though the SEC recently announced that US corporations will be required to use IFRS starting in 2014.
And that there will be a mandatory 2-year period between 2012 and 2014, when they'll have to present their accounts in both GAAP and IFRS.
I'm impressed, Kate. You seem to be quite an expert.
No, Bill, not me. The expert is Carlos.
Carlos?
Sorry, my boyfriend. He's a financial specialist. Of course, I studied accounting at university, but to be perfectly honest, it was never my strong point. I've always been more interested in marketing. It sounds as though you know everything about accounting.
My passion was always engineering. But you'll discover that when you occupy a general management position, you can't avoid accounting, even if you have a specialist to fall back on.
Yes. As you can imagine, I showed him all the balance sheets and income statements, and he gave me lots of explanations, and a lot of opinions too. I hope that's not a problem.
Certainly not. UC publishes its financial statements in its annual report, as you know.
Of course. By the way, Bill, was it you who prepared the accounts?
No, it was David Costa, our chief accountant. He does all our bookkeeping and prepares the accounts for United Chocolate. Obviously, the parent company consolidates the accounts of its subsidiaries.
So David is still here?
He most certainly is. Do you remember him?
Very well, but Christopher Vincent left.
Yes, he got the chance to return to the drinks industry, which was what he'd always wanted, and he jumped at it.
I can imagine. Chocolate was never really his passion. Anyway, let's get back to business.
So, what did Carlos think of our financial situation?
Well, to sum things up, I would say that he stressed three things. First of all, the lack of investment by United Chocolate from the very beginning. Secondly, the decline in last year's turnover compared with the previous year. And thirdly, the gradual decrease in net profit in recent years.
I'd say that Carlos is right on target. Those are the very issues we have to address, but you, Kate, can only do that by making some important strategic decisions.
I agree that strategy is the key word here. I've obviously done a lot of thinking too, so let me put some of my ideas to you.
Comprehension. For how long has Kate been back in the UK?
Kate has been back in the UK for no more than a week. It is Monday, and we are told about her first weekend.
Why is Bill Hayward afraid that Kate may have had difficulty understanding Norfolk Chocolate's accounts?
Because he thinks that she's probably more used to the American way of presenting company accounts now.
When will US corporations be obliged to start using IFRS to present their accounts?
They will be obliged to use IFRS and US GAAP as from 2012, but starting in 2014, they will be required to use only IFRS.
Do you think that Bill Hayward is right to think that Kate is an expert in accounting?
Certainly not. She tells him that her expertise comes from her boyfriend, Carlos, and that she herself had always been more interested in marketing.
Is it true to say that Bill Hayward is an expert in accounting?
Not really. He says his passion was always engineering, and suggests that he only got to know about accounting when his general management position at Norfolk Chocolate forced him to do so.
Why did Kate probably show Norfolk Chocolate's accounts to her boyfriend?
She probably showed the accounts to Carlos in order to get some explanations, and to discover his opinion about the financial situation.
What does Bill Hayward mean when he says that United Chocolate consolidates Norfolk Chocolate's accounts?
He means that United Chocolate plc, the parent company, integrates the accounts of its subsidiaries, like Norfolk Chocolate, into the accounts of the group.
Why did Christopher Vincent probably leave Norfolk Chocolate?
From what Bill Hayward and Kate say, we can assume that he had always preferred the drinks industry to the chocolate industry, and jumped at the chance to return to the former.
What does Bill Hayward think of Carlos's assessment of Norfolk Chocolate's financial situation?
Bill Hayward thinks that Carlos's assessment of Norfolk Chocolate's financial situation is very accurate, and what's more, it seems to correspond to his own.
According to Bill Hayward, what needs to be done about Norfolk Chocolate's financial situation?
He believes that before they can address the issues which Carlos stressed, they need to make some important strategic decisions.
Chapter 47. The Way Forward. A month has passed since Kate arrived back at Norfolk Chocolate. She's wasted no time in getting to work on her ideas for turning the firm around. Today she has called a meeting with the management team, as well as the union representatives, to sound them out and obtain their reactions. Bill Hayward declined Kate's invitation to attend, arguing that he thought it was important for her to assert her position as acting managing director. Kate is about to conclude her presentation.
So let me say that I've tried to be frank and honest in my assessment of our company's situation. I've studied the figures in great detail with unbiased eyes. Having said that, however, I feel I must stress once again my unwavering loyalty to UC, who...
Look, I'm sorry, but as a union representative, I don't understand your position at all. You spend the best part of an hour telling us about the errors of the past, or at least those that have been made since the takeover, and then you say you remain loyal to UC. I suppose at the next meeting you'll be telling us that production is going to be relocated to Eastern Europe or somewhere like that.
Relocation is not an option. You have my word on that. But since you express, quite rightly, the concern of your members, I can tell you that simply closing the factory here in Norwich certainly is an option, and has been for quite a few years.
Ah, so now we're getting the truth. Relocation or closure, what's the difference? Everybody loses their job. That's the bottom line.
Look, Rick, perhaps you'd let me finish what I was saying. I repeat, I remain loyal to UC. But you must realise that they don't consider the takeover as a success. They've had difficulty integrating Norfolk Chocolate into their structures, and they no doubt made a big mistake when they decided to stop the production of Norfolk nuggets here in Norwich. That explains their reluctance to invest in this company. I'm sure you would agree, David.
Oh, absolutely, Kate. There's no point in pouring money into a firm you don't believe in anymore. You just let production slowly run down and manufacture the products with the smallest possible markups.
Which explains our stagnant turnover and the gradual erosion of our net profit.
That's it.
What do you intend to do then, Miss Hewitt?
I was going to tell you. Over the last 10 days or so, I've been in discussions with the top management of United Chocolate. They'd now be prepared to sell Norfolk Chocolate, if we can find a buyer, of course.
If UC isn't interested in us, I don't imagine anyone else will be.
That's where you're wrong, Rick. I've been in contact with a quality chocolate manufacturer in California. It's a young firm, small but very dynamic, with big ambitions.
That's great news, Kate. But would UC be willing to sell the Norfolk Nuggets brand, which it now owns?
I think they would, David. They say it's old-fashioned and no longer corresponds to consumer demand. But the people in California have some very precise ideas about how to use it. They believe that...
Comprehension. What was Kate's objective in calling today's meeting?
Kate's objective was to bring together the management team and the union representatives in order to sound them out and obtain their reactions.
Why is Bill Hayward not present at this meeting?
Bill Hayward declined Kate's invitation to the meeting because he thought it was important for her to assert her position as acting managing director.
What apparent contradiction does Rick Palmer remark upon in Kate's presentation?
On the one hand, Kate has tried to be frank and honest in her assessment of Norfolk Chocolate's situation, which no doubt implies a certain amount of criticism of UC. On the other hand, she stresses on several occasions her unwavering loyalty to the parent company.
What does Rick Palmer fear that Kate will soon be announcing?
He fears that Kate will soon be announcing the relocation of Norfolk Chocolate to Eastern Europe or somewhere like that.
According to Kate, are Rick's fears justified?
Yes and no. Kate says that relocation is not an option, but that the closure of the factory definitely is.
What no doubt explains UC's reluctance to invest in Norfolk Chocolate.
According to Kate, the fact that UC doesn't consider its takeover of Norfolk Chocolate to be a success. They've had difficulty integrating the company into their structures, and they no doubt made a mistake when they decided to stop the production of Norfolk nuggets in Norwich.
What has Kate been doing over the last 10 days or so?
She's been having discussions with the top management of United Chocolate about the possibility of selling Norfolk Chocolate.
What is UC's current position concerning Norfolk Chocolate?
According to Kate, they would now be willing to sell the company provided a buyer can be found.
Describe the potential buyer that Kate has been in touch with.
The potential buyer is a Californian quality chocolate manufacturer, a young firm, small but very dynamic, with big ambitions.
According to David Costa, what might be an obstacle to the sale of Norfolk Chocolate?
We can assume David Costa is worried that United Chocolate might not be willing to sell the Norfolk Nuggets brand.
Chapter 48. Asking a favour. Kate is moving ahead with her plans to give Norfolk Chocolate a new lease of life. She has come down to London for a discreet and unofficial business lunch with Alexander Spencer-Jones, UC's Director of Human Resources. She hopes to enlist his support.
It's lovely to see you again so soon, Kate.
Now that UC seems prepared to sell the subsidiary, I need to move ahead quickly.
You know, I was delighted at the way the discussions with top management went in Bristol. Obviously, any such sale, provided a buyer can be found, will have to be approved by the board. But there should be no problem now. Most of the board members have wanted to ditch Norfolk Chocolate for a number of years now.
Well, you know about the contacts with Cuarenta y Nueve in California. The CEO has taken over the negotiations with them now.
Yes, Stephen told me he was happy with the way things were going. They seem very interested in the Norfolk Nuggets brand.
While UC's board members find the brand old-fashioned. Too bad for them.
Between you and me, Kate, it's a golden opportunity for you if you play your cards right. And I know you will.
Thank you, Alex. You've always supported me. I've come down here to ask you a favour.
And I'll be happy to oblige, if I can, of course.
I'd like to hire somebody, urgently.
And who is that?
It's Carlos Garcia.
Carlos Garcia. Oh, you mean your boyfriend?
I'd rather you use the word partner, Alex. Husband-to-be, in fact.
Congratulations! Carlos is a very lucky man.
If you say so. I know what you're thinking. There's an ethical issue here about hiring my future husband. What's more, Carlos made it very clear from the beginning that he would never work in my company. He used the word nepotism.
So?
Carlos has set up his own consulting business, so he wouldn't be working for Norfolk Chocolate. Not directly, at least.
You mean that he would take part in the negotiations?
That's not for me to decide, Alex. But you might like to suggest it to Stephen Stevens. Not because I'm trying to find work for Carlos, but because I want this sale to take place, and I want it to be successful.
And he can make that happen?
Look, Alex, Carlos was the one who identified Quarenta y Nueve as a potential buyer in the first place. It's a firm started by Hispanics in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's a Hispanic American and understands that community perfectly. He's also a finance specialist with a successful career in an oil company in Houston. He'd be invaluable after the sale, too.
I can certainly see your point.
And of course, he's always shown a great deal of respect and admiration for UC in the time we've been together.
Did he really have any choice, Kate?
Comprehension. Explain why Kate has come down to London.
She has come down to London for what is described as a discreet and unofficial business lunch with Alexander Spencer Jones. She hopes to obtain his support for her plans and ask him her favour.
What has pushed Kate to move ahead quickly?
She has been encouraged to do this by the fact that UC now seems prepared to sell Norfolk Chocolate.
According to Alexander Spencer Jones, how will the board react to the sale of Norfolk Chocolate?
He says that the board will probably react favourably to the sale. Indeed, most of its members have wanted to get rid of the company for a number of years.
How does United Chocolate's CEO feel about the negotiations with Quarenta y Nueve?
According to Alexander, Stephen Stevens is happy with the way they're going.
Why is Alexander surprised to learn that Kate would like to hire Carlos Garcia?
Because he knows that Carlos Garcia is Kate's boyfriend, as he says. He no doubt believes, as Kate suspects, that hiring Carlos would raise an ethical problem and that Kate might be accused of nepotism.
According to Kate, why would Carlos not be working directly for Norfolk Chocolate?
She says that Carlos has set up his own consulting business, which means that he would not be on the payroll of Norfolk Chocolate.
Explain briefly the favour that Kate is asking Alexander.
Kate would like Alexander to use his influence on Stephen Stevens, United Chocolate's CEO, to convince him to offer Carlos a key role in negotiating the sale of their subsidiary to Quarenta y Nueve.
Give 2 reasons why Kate believes that Carlos is important if the sale of Norfolk Chocolate to Quarenta y Nueve is to be a success.
Quarenta y Nueve is a company started by Hispanics, and Carlos is a Hispanic American, i.e., he understands that community perfectly. He is a finance specialist who has had a successful career in an oil company.
In Kate's opinion, would Carlos's role come to an end once the sale had taken place?
No, not at all. On the contrary, she says that he'd be invaluable after the sale too.
Why do you think Alexander says jokingly, "Did he really have any choice, Kate?"
He is probably implying that Carlos is under Kate's spell and prepared to do whatever he thinks she expects of him.
Chapter 49. Marketing for the future. In her plans for the future of Norfolk chocolate, Kate would like to hire her old friend, Molly Maguire, who after a very successful spell in marketing with Birtwhistles of Ilkley, returned to her native Ireland. However, Molly accepted Kate's invitation to come to Norwich to discuss the new position.
Molly, it was wonderful of you to come over at such short notice. You don't look a day older than when I last saw you.
Well, it's good of you to say so, but I don't believe a word of it. You're looking beautiful anyway. Chocolate must be good for you.
Working in chocolate, at least. I try not to eat too much. And you don't miss chocolate, ever?
I don't miss working for Birtwhistles, if that's what you mean. I left them because I thought I'd gone about as far as I could go. They're such a small setup, and I've really enjoyed working in tourism. It's so important for my country.
So you were able to get your Friday off work to come over to England?
No problem. I have a lot of leave left, which I never find time to take.
That's great. You'll be able to spend the weekend with us. Meet Carlos.
I'd love to. So tell me about the job, Kate.
Well, I told you that UC has agreed in principle to sell Norfolk chocolate to 49. I asked Alexander Spencer-Jones to try and persuade Stephen Stevens to agree to using Carlos as a consultant for the takeover.
He certainly seems to be the ideal man for the job.
Anyway, when I phoned you at the beginning of the week, I just heard that he'd been accepted.
I always said you had a way with Alexander.
So now that I've got Carlos on board for the takeover itself, I need someone to work on the marketing aspects for the future. Someone young and talented like you, Molly.
Well, not so sure about young, but I'll go along with talented, hey? But tell me, Kate, there's something I don't really understand.
What's that, Molly?
You talk about the takeover and the future, but when 49 is the owner of Norfolk Chocolate, how do you know what their marketing plans will be? Or even whether they'll keep you on here? I don't wish to sound pessimistic, of course.
That's an excellent question. I would have been surprised if you hadn't asked it. Obviously, I've been in contact with the people from 49, and Carlos has too now. They've given us assurances concerning my position and a future role for Carlos.
And what about marketing? What's in it for me, so to speak?
Quite a challenge, in my opinion. 49 is a young firm, very dynamic, but they don't have any experience of Europe so far. They're very interested in the Norfolk Nuggets brand, though. They're looking to us, in fact you, hopefully, to revamp the brand. In the UK initially. Then, riding high on the success of the Nuggets, they plan to establish their own products here and in Europe.
Carry on, Kate. You're beginning to interest me. But why is a firm from San Francisco so wild about Norfolk Nuggets?
OK, let's take a look at their website.